Welcome back to week 3 of the Pantry Challenge, the month where I don't do any grocery shopping. So far that hasn't been too challenging. Each week I have to get a little more creative, but things are going smoothly. I'm excited to share with you what I made for my family this week. It is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and so I decided to make a special breakfast. My husband's home from work, we're going to spend the day at home, and so I thought pancakes were in order. I have two different pancake recipes that I like to use. One is sourdough based, and this one is not. I find it best to have both sourdough and regular options available because you never know when you need to whip something up quickly. Of course, sourdough is always my preference because of that good fermentation, but sometimes you just want some pancakes. And so these are my freshly milled pancakes made with soft white wheat flour, and I do have a whole video dedicated to this recipe. This recipe is simple and quick whenever my kids are hungry and I want to get something on the table. So, like with most recipes, I combine my dry ingredients in a bowl and then I put my wet ingredients in a bowl. I have butter melted in the bottom. You could use a different cooking fat like coconut oil if it needed to be dairy free. Then I sweetened it with maple syrup. You could also use honey or something else if that works for your family, some vanilla extract, and now a couple of eggs. I'm going to top that off with the correct amount of milk. Again, if you want to use a non-dairy milk, that would work in this recipe too. You could measure all of this in separate bowls and combine it, but I do my best to eyeball it all in one measuring container so I don't have to get multiple things dirty. Now all that's left is to combine the wet into the dry ingredients and mix it well, but not too well. You don't want to overmix it and make them tough, although that would be challenging with the soft white wheat flour. I'm just going to be really gentle here so I don't spill anything. I'll switch to a spatula to make sure I can clean everything off the sides, combine it thoroughly, and then let it sit. So the key to these being thick, tall, fluffy pancakes is to let the batter sit a while. If you've been around here, you know that freshly milled flour takes longer to absorb the liquid than regular all-purpose flour, and so we let that sit, let it thicken up a bit, and it makes some very tall, fluffy pancakes. My kids always request chocolate chips in their pancakes, and I decided to oblige today. I put, 4 or 5 chocolate chips per pancake. I've seen some people load it, like with a whole handful of chocolate chips. So I'm very curious. If you do chocolate chip pancakes, how many chocolate chips do you put in per pancake? Please comment down below and let me know. Is this very few? Is this normal? I'm curious. The cooked side of my pancakes got a little bit darker than we usually like them because I was thinking about filming and all the things, but otherwise they turned out great and they were all enjoyed by the family. I love having basic recipes like this in my repertoire so my kids can still get pancakes, but I can bump up that nutrition with the freshly milled flour. My husband and the kids went out to go sledding this morning, and then we invited our neighbors over for lunch. So I threw together some hamburger patties, some tater tots, and some hot dogs for a quick lunch with our friends. It is mid-afternoon and I am in recipe testing mode. I have a friend coming over later this week, and her family is gluten-free, dairy-free, and very low sugar. So I wanted to make them a berry crisp as a dessert, but I was hesitant about the topping recipe that came with it. It just didn't look quite right compared to other recipes that I've used for crisp topping, so I decided to try it out on some apple crisp for my family. So, spoiler alert, it did not turn out very well. The crisp topping I didn't like how it turned out. It tasted fine, but it just I didn't like it. So I did not use this crisp topping for my friend's crisp. I just used mine and adapted it differently. But this is how you make it. Generally, it's oats and flour and salt and some seasonings, and then you add a fat of some kind. This recipe, I use coconut oil as the fat because, again, it has to be dairy free. But it's only a 1/4 cup of fat. In my original recipe, the one I usually use, it's a 1/2 cup. And yeah, it was just too dry and crumbly. So for hers, I used a full 1/2 cup of fat for my crisp topping, and I was much happier with that consistency. When I make apple crisp, I just grab 2 jars of home canned pie filling, and that is my base. I like to keep it really simple, and I'm super grateful for the time and effort that we put into canning these pie fillings because they make my life so much easier when it comes to things like this. And you better believe that I'm getting my spatula in there to get every single piece of this goodness, because once you start producing your own food, you realize how much effort goes into every single bit of it, and I do not want to let any go to waste. Every fall, we process apples with some of my husband's family members. We turn a bunch of it into applesauce and some of it into apple pie filling, and it is a treasure throughout the year. Now I'm going to add my very dry crisp topping. Like I said, I knew it looked off, but I wanted to trust the recipe because it's my first time making it. So I just went for it, hoping that the coconut oil would I don't know, melt more and get it more saturated, but it didn't. Again, it tastes really good because it's flour and oats and sugar and apples underneath. So it turned out fine, but I will use a different recipe in the future. Moving on to supper prep. My husband requested sausage potato chowder for dinner, which is great because I have some potatoes in the basement that are getting quite soft. So this is a great application for them. I peeled my potatoes, I cleaned them, and now I'm just going to dice them into small cubes. I struggle to store potatoes. So, for those of you who can store potatoes for a long time in your basement or wherever in your house, can you please tell me where you store them, how you store them? Because mine either get green or soft or start growing eyes, and I'm just not sure what I'm doing wrong. So, if you have any wisdom, again, please leave that in the comments. One of the reasons I love making YouTube videos is I have the whole internet to help me learn new things. So, to all my viewers, thank you very much for teaching me things, and hopefully I can share a couple things in return. I like that this glass bowl has measuring units on the side so I can see how many potatoes in there and know it's the correct amount for my soup. And it turned out perfectly. The number of potatoes I cut was exactly the right amount I needed for the soup. That's always a win. Now I am dicing some onion for the base of my soup. I have some butter melting in my Dutch oven here, and I'm going to add that onion and let it saute a bit to soften it up and sweeten the flavor. I have my cast iron skillet on the other side of my stove warming up because that is where I'm going to cook the sausage. We buy most of our meat in bulk. We get a quarter of a beef at a time. We got a whole or a half a hog at some point. So you'll see a lot of these baggies that I pull out of my freezer. These are not from the store. These are from bulk purchases from local farmers or family members who are farmers as well. My onions have sauteed long enough, so I'm going to add a box of chicken broth. Now, I like to make and can my own chicken broth, but I don't have any on the shelf right now, so I purchased a couple of these boxes from Walmart to keep on hand, just in case I would want them. This is a reminder that yes, homemade is best, but sometimes that's not always an option. And so I'm thankful for the grocery store whenever I need something like chicken broth and don't have it on the shelf. I added my potatoes to my soup base, and now I'm just going to let these simmer until they are tender. I'll keep stirring the sausage to make sure that cooks, and I'm probably also multitasking as a mom in the background. Once my potatoes are soft enough, I grab my hand masher and I break up the cubes into smaller chunks. This is one way to add texture and thickness without adding too much thickener, like the cornstarch you'll see here. I'm not opposed to adding the cornstarch as a thickener, but I do like breaking up the potatoes because of the texture it creates, so the soup is not just broth and hunks of potato, but it's more cohesive. I'd also like to comment on the fact that I am wearing shorts. It is a snow day, it is the middle of winter, but I worked out this afternoon, and so shorts were appropriate for my workout, and I just haven't changed because I'm still plenty warm, working over a hot stove and all the things. So, yes, I am wearing shorts, and that is why. This is how my soup looks after adding the milk and the cornstarch. It will thicken up a bit as that cornstarch cooks. This recipe called for a bag of frozen peas and carrots, but I didn't have that. Instead, I found this container of frozen carrots from my garden last year, so I decided to add that to the soup instead. My kids don't really love peas as it is, so adding just carrots was better for them too. I added the sausage, and now my goal is just to combine everything, warm it up thoroughly, and it was time for supper. On the side, I served some bread and butter. My kids really like to dip the bread in the soup, and that helps them actually eat soup. My apple crisp came out of the oven, I let it cool a bit, and we had dessert and called it a night. I will see you in the morning for breakfast. All right, buddy, what'd you put on your yogurt?
Raisins and
Granola.
granola.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, show us your yogurt. What did you put in it? Yeah, the granola.
Yeah.
Okay, are you going to eat it now?
And raisins.
Raisins.
Out.
Since the kids have been watching me make videos for the whole month, they want to participate too, and I think it's very sweet, so they like to show off their meals as well. Today, I have a doctor's appointment this afternoon, so my mom joined us for lunch, and so this is all the stuff that I warmed up in the oven for us. Everyone got to pick what they wanted to eat, and we were all happy and well fed. Tonight's supper is creamy sausage rigatoni. I was away for a couple of hours at my doctor's appointment, so I needed something quick and easy to serve the family tonight. So the first thing I did was cooked up some pasta. I'm capable of making pasta, but I like to keep dry pasta on hand for these occasions. I drained that in the sink, and now I'm adding a jar of homemade pasta sauce and a block of cream cheese. I'm just going to combine these on the stove until they are well incorporated. Unfortunately, my block of cream cheese was still slightly frozen, which is why it's not incorporating as quickly as you might anticipate. Here I found a container of cooked ground sausage in my freezer, and it's about a pound, and that's what I need for this recipe. So instead of getting some uncooked pork out of the freezer, I just got this out, thawed it, and that's what I'm including in my dinner tonight. The meat that you see in the background is for a different recipe for a different video, so we'll come back to that another time. The meat sauce is finished, so I'm going to add my noodles back in and just mix all that until it is well combined. This is a simple supper, but it tastes really good. There have been times where my family wipes out this entire Dutch oven in a sitting because they really like it. So if you need a super simple fast food supper, I recommend keeping these ingredients on your shelf or in your freezer. They are always a hit at my house. I usually add some frozen veggies or a fruit on the side, but even if you don't, it's a great filling supper anyway. It is January 21st, and for breakfast this morning, we are having eggs and toast. It's a classic for a reason. It is always delicious. Well, my kids don't always think so. They get tired of eggs, but I could eat this breakfast every single day. I like to crack my eggs into a mason jar because they're easy to whip without them flying out of the jar, and I like to use a fork because it's easier to clean than a whisk. I've had my cast iron preheating, and I have plenty of cooking fat in the bottom. This is either butter or bacon grease, I'm not sure which, but then I put my eggs in the bottom and let them cook. I like to let them sit and harden up a bit before I start to move them around the pan. It took me a long time to learn how to cook eggs in my cast iron skillet without them sticking, a lot of trial and error, so if you're in that stage, keep going. I had some leftover eggs in the fridge, and I don't know about you, but leftover eggs do not get eaten very often in my house because reheating them is kind of a nightmare. So I just threw them in this pan with the other ones, and they were enjoyed. Nobody knew they were leftovers. We had a play date over lunchtime, so I made these Instant Pot sweet and tangy meatballs with rice. Now we are at dinner time, and I'm just putting out all of the leftovers. I cannot possibly make any more new food until these items are eaten out of the fridge. So this is the layout tonight. Again, everyone can come pick what they want for supper and get the leftovers out of my fridge. I decided to make smoothies this morning for breakfast. My kids like smoothies no matter the weather. So I had some frozen mixed berries I threw in there with some milk and some yogurt and protein powder. I also had a couple of pancakes left over in the fridge, so I warmed those up and they got eaten as well. The kids decided that they wanted yogurt bowls for lunch, so the yogurt bowl on the left is just plain yogurt. I added strawberry jam to make it strawberry yogurt. The other two are plain with maple syrup and all the toppings they wanted. Tonight was another easy supper using my freezer to my advantage. So I have some leftover soup that was in the fridge, and then I also have these cups that I like to call pick your own supper cups. So whenever I have just a little bit of leftovers, I'll put them in these freezer containers, label them, and they go in our deep freezer. So tonight, everyone got to go down and pick a supper that they wanted that we will warm up and serve for each person. I first got this idea when I was cooking for a family member who had recently lost a spouse. Cooking for one person can be challenging, so I made a bunch of these cups and a bunch of different meals that she could warm up whenever she needed a meal. Ideally, this would be thawed before I try to warm it up. It wasn't, and it still turned out great. So here is some meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and corn. Thanks, buddy.
Yep. More bear. Yeah.
Speaking of yogurt, it's time to make some more. We drink raw milk that we get from a local farmer, and if she has old milk, it's a couple days old and she can't sell it for full price, she will sell it to me for half price to make yogurt. Mind you, the milk is not that old. It's about 4 days from the time it was milked, and so she doesn't want to sell that to customers and let it sit in their fridge, and so it works perfectly for me to come home from our milk pickup and just put some milk in the Instant Pot and make yogurt. I have a full video on my channel explaining the process in detail, but I will show you the highlights here in this video. It has been a while since I've made yogurt in my Instant Pot. I've taken the convenience route of buying yogurt at the store, but since making this a couple of times this month, I really do like this method and it is very cost effective. All I did was pour my milk into my Instant Pot and then turn on the slow cook or keep warm function to warm up the milk before I do the next step. While that sits, I'm going to work on some dinner prep. We are having breakfast for dinner tonight, and so my first step is to get these sausages arranged in my cast iron skillet. These will go in the oven to bake with everything else that I plan to make this evening. I do my best to maximize my appliance usage, so if I can do a bunch of stuff in the oven, that is the way to go. The sausages went in, and now I'm grabbing the hash brown patties. I like to keep these in the freezer as a treat for my family. Everyone really enjoys them. They go quickly. The next thing I will work on is the eggs. Now, I could scramble these on the stovetop, but remember the oven will be on, so I've decided to bake them. I'm going to crack 10 eggs into this bowl and add a couple of mix ins, and then this will be enough for an 8x8 casserole of eggs for supper. I often add a little bit of milk or a little bit of water, and that helps with the fluffiness factor, I think. And I'm just going to whip these really well until they are all well incorporated. Again, I like to use a fork because it's easy to throw in the dishwasher. Here I found a jar of ham chunks in the freezer. I must have cut a ham steak and had it left over, so I put them in the freezer. So I'm just going to pick these out piece by piece until I have enough for my casserole. I have been multitasking while making dinner. I've come over and mixed my milk or whisked it or stirred it a couple of times to make sure it wasn't getting too hot on the bottom. Now I'm going to turn on the boil setting so it can come up to 180 degrees. I buttered my 8x8 casserole dish, and now I'm going to add my egg mixture. I just need to break up the ham bits because they are still frozen together a little bit, but I'll spread those out and then get ready to top it with some cheese. I had this cheese already shredded in the refrigerator, so it's easy to throw some of that on top. And then, after I put the cheese on, I remembered that I didn't add any seasonings to the eggs whatsoever. So I'm just going to add them to the top and call it good. So I get some salt, some pepper, some garlic powder, and onion powder. And off to the oven they go. I find that eggs are very flexible with baking temperature as long as you adjust the time. I'm also getting some toast into the toaster to serve with our eggs tonight. The Instant Pot beeped and now reads yogurt, which tells me the boil cycle is done, which means the milk should be up to 180 degrees. And if it is, I can continue with the next step. Yep, we are good to go. So I like to let this sit in my Instant Pot for 5 minutes, then I'll take it out to cool it down to 105, 110 degrees.
All right, buddy, tell me what's on your plate.
So bread, steak, well, not steak, some sort of meat. Sausage on my plate, egg, and hash brown.
Mm-hmm. All right, your turn. Tell me what you did with your plate.
I have egg, hash brown, bread, and sausage, and I made a sandwich with them.
That's how you arranged it, like a sandwich? Nice. All right, buddy, tell me about your plate.
Yes, you can eat now.
That's all you have?
Yeah.
Okay, you ready to eat?
No.
Oh, you need more of something? Okay.
I feel very blessed to have this table full of people who love me, that I get to care for, and we get to share meals together on a daily basis. While we were eating, I left my yogurt to cool on my countertop. And as it cools, it gets this skin on top. It's the milk solids or the milk fats that solidify on top of the milk after it has cooled. So I definitely want to remove that instead of trying to whisk it into my yogurt. So I will clean that off and then I will check the temperature. It can't be too hot before you add the yogurt starter, or else it will kill all the good bacteria that you want to introduce by adding the yogurt starter. So I'm looking for the temperature of the milk to be around 105 or 110 degrees at this point. And we are right in the ballpark, which means we are good to go adding our yogurt starter and keep this process moving. I have our favorite plain Greek yogurt here, and to make a gallon of yogurt, I need 4 tablespoons of pre-prepared yogurt. This gives me the bacteria strains that I want to incubate into my yogurt while it is sitting in the Instant Pot, turning from milk into yogurt. I believe the original recipe uses a half a gallon of milk, which I imagine would work a lot better for a lot of other families, but with the way my kids eat yogurt, a gallon works best for us. After all of that starter yogurt is in the milk, I'm going to whisk it and make sure it's all well combined before adding my lid and turning on my settings. I'm going to push my yogurt button until it has the correct settings. I want this to incubate for 22 hours. You can change that as high or as low as you'd like. For us, this works well, and just let it sit until it turns into yogurt. 22 hours later, my yogurt is done. I'll pop it in the fridge and then we can have it to eat. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, and I'll see you next week.